Boldwood presents No Ex Before Marriage, written by Portia MacIntosh and read by Karen Cass. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. The first rule of Wife Club is that you talk about Wife Club all the time. Today is my friend Rachel's wedding, the last person in our friendship group to get married, and it's an interesting one. There are 4 of us. Me, Rachel, Lindsay and Sally, and we've all been friends for a long time, and I mean a long time. Pudley Village is only a small place, so the 4 of us, being the same age, landed us in the same nursery group, and we stayed friends all the way through school into adulthood. We're all 30 now, and while I may not feel like we're as close as we used to be, I think it's impressive that we're all still friends. The reason we're drifting apart is the aforementioned Wife Club, and some of us perhaps not being quite as into it as others. It's funny that Rachel is the last one in our group to tie the knot, because she's always been the most enthusiastic about doing so. So much so that we had a bit of upset last year when Sally got married. Well, Rachel was a bridesmaid for me and then for Lindsay, so when Sally wound up getting married next and asked us all to be bridesmaids, Rachel had a total meltdown because, you know what they say, 3 times a bridesmaid, never a bride. I mean, they say that, but it's not true, is it? It's clearly not true because Rachel was eventually persuaded to be a bridesmaid for the 3rd time, and her wedding ceremony just finished, so it's obviously bullshit. We're currently in that weird stage between the ceremony and the wedding breakfast, right after the photos are taken, when everyone sort of mills around for a bit before taking their seats. I could do with a drink, but after having our bridal party photos taken, we're still standing in the semicircle we stood for our last photo, just chatting by a large hotel staircase that provided the backdrop, making the most of our time with Rachel before she's back to being a busy bride. I remember exactly what it's like at your own wedding. No one really lets you have a minute. You're just constantly talking to people, thanking them for coming, smiling, working your way through the formalities. "I can't thank you all enough for being my bridesmaids," Rachel gushes. She's got big bride energy right now. You know, that super smug level of extreme happiness where you know the world has no choice but to revolve around you. I don't mean to sound so cynical. Or maybe I do. But this wedding was planned down to the tiniest detail, excluding the groom, of course, long before Rachel even met Kevin. That's Rachel, though. She's always been the sensible one, always worrying about anything and everything to cover all bases. Don't get me wrong, it's been useful over the years, especially when we've all tried to coordinate trips or plan parties, but she does drive us all a little mad sometimes. I know no feeling like the heavy weight on my chest when Rachel hands us one of her itineraries, a more recent addition to her organisational tactics, thankfully, knowing full well we'll all have to stick to it or she'll have one of her meltdowns. "I just hope that by the end of the day, my wedding lives up to all of yours," Rachel replies. She has a look on her face that somehow shows that she knows her wedding is so far so superior. That's what she believes anyway. I'm not sure I agree. "No one was ever going to be able to compete with our street food fare," Sally half jokes. No one was ever going to be able to compete with Sally's wedding, full stop. Her husband's dad invented something completely boring, but worth an absolute fortune. I think it's a type of adhesive, because the whole family makes sticky jokes constantly, so there was no expense spared for her majorly tacky big day. Christ, even I'm doing it now. She's still getting her money's worth from the wedding, though. She almost always finds a way to mention it. Today it's going to be too easy. Back in February, at Lindsay's dad's wake, she was seriously reaching, but she got there in the end. Some tenuous link between the Tunnocks tea cakes they had out and her £2,000 wedding cake. She had the same baker as Meghan and Harry, don't you know? Crass as it is, you've got to hand it to her. It's impressive how she always finds a way to bring it up. That's Sally, though. She's always had the vibe of a snooty rich person even before she was actually rich. Lindsay is probably the one who has changed the least. She's still a big hug of a friend, always smiling, always preferring baking to bitching. There's nothing that girl doesn't think she can fix with scones. But she, like the other two, has grown increasingly sensible over the years in a way that just doesn't seem to be happening for me. Thankfully, I didn't let Kevin make any decisions or the colour scheme would be Man City and we'd all be doing karaoke after the wedding breakfast, Rachel says with a snort. Sally shoots her a not-so-subtle look. Rachel quickly turns to me. Not that there's anything wrong with karaoke at a wedding, Poppy, she reassures me, visibly cringing. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned your wedding at all, should I? It's fine, I insist. It isn't awkward when people mention my wedding. It's awkward when they mention it and then cringe themselves inside out before trying to make me feel better with pitying looks and soppy words, which, ironically, only ever makes me feel worse. I've never really viewed my life choices in a negative light. It's only when I see them reflected back at me in the eyes of others, all contorted like I'm looking at them in a funhouse mirror, that I start to wonder if maybe I have made a mess of things. I'm excited for the food, Sally says, changing the subject. I had to taste test so much food for our street food fair that I was worried I wouldn't fit into my Vera Wang dress. We all look at her. I did, though, she reassures us, as if we didn't know. I've always been a size 8. It turns out it is in fact possible to roll your eyes without moving them because I just did it. Well, I think I did it. It's also possible I just rolled them properly and no one noticed because no one's eyes are on my size 12 body today. I say size 12. I'm a 10 if I'm feeling optimistic, a 14 if I've eaten too much, a 16 for my top half in certain high street retailers. My point being, claiming to be a certain size always, come on, she wasn't born a size 8, was she? Was she? Means nothing. Not only because sizing isn't universal, but because it doesn't define any of us. It's all about perspective. My feet are a size 8, but when I tell people that, they usually just give me pitying looks for that too. It must have been a nightmare for this lot, watching me dance in open-toed shoes at my karaoke wedding. As long as you're not cooking, Lindsay teases Sally. Well, that's why I thought that a couple's cooking class might be fun. The first one is in a couple of days, so we can go to a few before we jet off on our honeymoon to Hawaii. Rachel says this like we don't all already know where she's going, and it's worth pointing out that she isn't even off on her honeymoon until February. So we can all learn to cook and, Well, that's the first I'm hearing about this cooking class, which obviously means I'm not invited. Rachel can't hide that she knows she's put her foot in it. I actually think, Rachel peers into the reception room next to us, her eyes darting back and forth. Yes, I think it's time to take our seats. We have little seating maps dotted around with QR codes on them, so you can scan them to find where you're sitting. This room is not that big. Bridesmaids and groomsmen are over there, Lindsay says, pointing in the direction of the top table. It's family only at the actual top table, Rachel told us. There's a not-quite top table for close friends. Trust me, I've heard her talk about this wedding so much for so long. I know it all. Nothing could surprise me. I'm about to follow the other girls when Rachel places her arm on mine, holding me back. She waits a second or two until it's just us. Poppy, I actually thought it might be cool for you to sit somewhere else, she eventually says with a smile. What do you mean? I ask. Perhaps I can be surprised. I'm also pretty sure I know what she means already, but I want to hear her say it. Well, you know, I thought you'd like to sit at a table where you can meet some new people, she explains. And to be honest, with the tables only seating 6, with the other girls and their husbands, that's 4, And then 2 other people, that's 6, and with you just being on your own. I bite my tongue. It's her wedding day. So which table am I at? I ask coolly. Table 12, she replies. 12? I squeak back at her. How many tables are there? Oh, only 12, she replies, confirming that I am on the last table. It's over there. Table 12 couldn't be further from the top table without being out in the car park. Honestly, you'll be much happier there. People to meet, lots of singles and other divorced people too, she says, like that's going to be the answer to my prayers. Enjoy the food, hun. She dashes off before I can say anything. I don't know what I'd say to her if she hadn't. Not on her wedding day, anyway. Table 12. I can't believe it. The sad singles table. Has it really come to this? Perhaps it has, given that I'm the only one in our group who is single. Not only was I the first person in our group to get married, I was the first to get divorced too. And boy, they don't ever let me forget it. Chapter 2. In some ways, Rachel's wedding is like every wedding I've ever been to. The bride wore white, her dad gave her away, and all the guests are taking their seats in the function room, which is laid out beautifully with large round tables covered in pristine white cloths, topped with big bunches of flowers that match the bride's winter bouquet. The thing that makes this wedding different from all the others, and it does really feel different, is the fact that it's New Year's Eve. Never mind the fact that I'm pretty sure every wedding I've ever been to has taken place in the summer, meaning I always associate the events with long, warm, sunny days instead of cold, dark, dreary ones like today. But I've never actually been to a wedding that overlapped another occasion, like a birthday or a national holiday. For me, this wedding sort of covers both. Obviously, New Year's Eve is New Year's Eve, which is the case for everyone here, but the clock striking midnight doesn't just kick off all the phony new beginnings and short-lived healthy eating bullshit we all flirt with each year. It also marks the start of my birthday, pretty much to the minute. The night I was born was kind of a funny story. Not that I remember anything about it, obviously, but it's a story my parents enjoyed telling year after year. My mum was always a bit of a wild card. Despite having a super serious job in the legal profession, you wouldn't recognise her outside the office. She was fun and reckless and said whatever she wanted, did whatever popped into her head without giving it too much thought, and rarely worried about consequences. That's why, at pushing 9 months pregnant with me, she didn't think twice about going to a fancy-dress New Year's Eve party with my dad and their friends. No prizes for guessing that my mum went into labour before the clock struck midnight, and I was born shortly after, making me the first baby born in Lancashire in 1991. What makes the story funnier is that my dad, assuming my mum had gone home early with my auntie, didn't even realise my mum had gone into labour, so he stayed out partying all night. Something out of character for him, as he's always been the straight-laced, sensible one. This was before everyone had a mobile phone. Wow, saying that makes me sound so old. So he didn't even know I was born until he was walking home the next morning, still dressed as John McClane from Die Hard, when he noticed the local newspaper. And there I was, their first baby of the year, in the arms of my mum, who, hilariously, was still half wearing her Madonna cone bra. Needless to say, after spotting that, my dad got himself to the hospital faster than you could say yippee-ki-yay, and he somehow became even more sensible after that. I like to think it was my chaotic entry into this world that paved the way for my yo-yo life. It's always nice to blame it on something, isn't it? Well, when you get married and divorced by the time you're 25, it feels a little bit better being able to put it down to something other than who you are as a person. My mum, when she was still with us, always used to say I took after her, albeit reluctantly. She never tried to talk me out of getting married. She was all for it. She also helped me pick up the pieces when I got divorced. I always think of my mum more at this time of year, with Christmas and my birthday soon after. I wonder what she would think of me if she could see me now, slinking sheepishly up to table 12, the loser table. I say loser table. I don't think we're losers just for being single. I just know that will be the way Rachel sees us. She'll think she's doing some kind of public service putting us all together like this. Isn't it annoying when people find love and it makes them aggressively want to find it for you too? If her heart was in the right place, sure, why not? But I'm really starting to feel like my single status is, how would Sally describe it? Throwing off the aesthetic of the group. I'm already being left off the guest list for activities they're planning. Not that I'm all that gutted to be missing out on a couple's cooking class that sounds like a nightmare, but it would be nice to have been invited. I'm the fourth person to arrive at table 12, with 3 men already in their places, anxiously awaiting their fellow table mates, clearly already wise to the concept of the singles table. I feel a little bit like I'm on blind date. Or almost blind date, anyway. Blind in the sense that I didn't know I was going to be served up to the eligible bachelors at the wedding. Oh, the relief on their faces when an actual girl sits down at the table. "Hello," I say, with a brightness that does not at all genuinely reflect how I'm feeling on the inside. "Hi," the man directly in front of me says. "Hello," the man to his left says. The man to the right just gives me a slight wave. Good God, it's going to be a long day, and I mean that in both respects. It's going to feel like a long day if this is the level of chat the men at this table have to offer, but it's genuinely going to be an actual long day, given that this wedding is doubling up as a New Year's Eve party. "And you are?" the man in the middle asks, rather formally. He's probably in his late 30s. His dark hair is starting to go grey at the sides, which wouldn't be a problem, except the product he's used to slick it back hasn't worked, causing the sides to stick out wildly, making him look a bit like a rockhopper penguin. "I'm Poppy," I tell him. "You?" "Simon Alistair Ainsworth," he says, extending a hand for me to shake. "Car insurance salesman." I shake his hand only to come away with one of his business cards. "Oh, right," I say, a little bemused by, well, basically everything. "I can't drive, so—" I hand him his card back, and he takes it with such a look of disdain. "What, like you're on a ban?" he asks. His tone quickly shifts to something rather light-hearted for something so serious. "Big fan of the old Venetian water?" That's not something people call Prosecco, is it? I glance down at my glass, which I have just drained in the last few seconds, but how could I not at a time like this? "Not banned," I confirm. "Never learned. Didn't fancy it."
"Ignore him," the man to his left says. "I'm Pete. And if we're dropping our jobs when we introduce ourselves, I work in pharmaceuticals." "You work in a pharmacy," Simon corrects him. "I own a pharmacy," Pete replies, irritated. "You own the building," Simon continues, "on a mortgage." "I take it you two know each other already," I say, trying to ease the tension. "We're brothers,"
Pete says.
"Twin brothers,"
Simon corrects him. I glance back and forth between them. Pete looks about 10 years younger than Simon. In fact, the two of them don't look related at all. Simon reads my mind.
"Non-identical," he says with a sigh. "Simon's the serious one," Pete informs me. "I'm the fun one."
I nod. I don't really know what to say to that. "What's your name?" I ask the third fella.
"Craig,"
he tells me simply. He doesn't smile, he doesn't blink. He doesn't look at me for more than a second or two before he looks back down at his drink. I wait for him to say more than that, but he doesn't. He's either not remotely interested in me or absolutely terrified of talking to me, and I can't quite put my finger on which one it is.
So, what do you do?
Simon asks me. I manage a framing company, I reply. As is always the case, my table mates come down with a bad case of second-hand boredom.
Like picture frames and that?
Pete asks in disbelief. Yes, I reply. I don't get a chance to elaborate.
Well, that doesn't sound very exciting,
Simon replies with a snort. It is actually cooler than it sounds. For one, it's the family business. My parents may have met while they were studying for the bar, but my dad hated being a solicitor almost right away, so he quit to start his small framing business. It's a much bigger business now, which I like to think I helped with. We're not just a little shop anymore. We specialise in all sorts of custom frames, made from cool and unusual materials from all over the globe. Everything from fancy resin frames to eco-friendly ones made entirely from waste materials. We have these fun, colourful plastic-framed mirrors that sell like crazy on Etsy because they're made from plastic that has been cleaned out of the sea. I know it might still sound boring, but I do find managing a business fun, especially for someone as easygoing as my dad.
It sounds like you're a bit of a square,
Pete jokes. We actually like to think we're pretty edgy, I reply. Oh God, there it is. My first time making the joke my dad always makes about how cool the company is. Maybe I am boring. No one even laughs.
That's a nice dress, Simon eventually says. I love all things blue. He really does,
Pete quips with a wiggle of his eyebrows. Simon doesn't get it.
You were one of the bridesmaids, weren't you?
Simon continues. I was, I reply.
So why are you sitting here?
Pete asks. Probably because she's a single loser like the rest of us, a female voice chimes in. I glance next to me as a woman takes a seat alongside me. At first it worries me that I'm going to have some competition at the singles table, and from a woman who is my exact opposite. I'm on the taller side for a woman, with long, straight blonde hair, although it's pulled into an uninspired updo today, just like the other bridesmaids. My rival is short, with big, bouncing brown curls, the type that can only be natural. She has occasional purple highlights throughout her do, which match her form-fitting dress. Of course, I'm not remotely interested in any of these men, so she's not really a rival. There is one seat left at the table, though, on my left. Surely whoever sits here is going to be the most eligible bachelor by default. Well, Simon, Pete and Craig aren't exactly my type. I'm not even sure what my type is, but it isn't these guys. Oh, imagine if my dream man comes and takes a seat next to me. So long as he prefers blondes and doesn't ask too many questions, I might stand a chance with him.
You seem like a handful,
Pete tells her. You don't, she claps back. The name's Kat. Pete looks a little embarrassed, but not beaten.
I'm Pete, he says. This is my brother Simon.
They seem to pitch themselves as though they come as a team, or perhaps they do this to offer themselves up as multiple choice. Which brother do you want, A or B? Either way, it must get awkward. I also get the impression that they seem to think they couldn't be less alike, but despite their obvious differences, the more I hear from them, the more alike they seem. There are some definite prominent family traits, one of which is audacity.
What do you do?
Simon asks her. What do I do about what? She replies. I'm sure she knows what they mean.
For work,
Simon clarifies. Oh, I'm sort of between gigs at the moment, she says casually.
Like unemployed?
Simon replies. The words taste bad in his mouth. No, not like unemployed, she replies. Just unemployed. He seems to have more of a problem with it than she does.
And I thought your box reply was boring,
he tells me. Frames, I remind him.
Well, that's even worse,
he snorts. We're clearly not the calibre of women these men are looking for. It's fine because, like I said, they're not exactly my type either. But it's a sad state of affairs when everyone at the singles table seems to repel everyone else. I'm sure it's not true, that this is just a terrible way to try to get people together, but it does make you start to wonder exactly why everyone is single. Craig doesn't talk, so that one is easy, and Simon and Pete aren't exactly charming the pants off us. I wonder what's wrong with me and Kat. Kat is clearly gorgeous. Surely a little thing like her being between jobs wouldn't put a man off. Then again, I'm not even sure if they are put off. It just seems like they're being mean, high school style. This is Craig, I tell her, changing the subject. Craig nods in acknowledgement. Does this one not talk? Kat says with a laugh. He seems really uncomfortable, so I chime in. And I'm Poppy, I tell her. Nice to meet you. You too, she replies. I was going to ask, bride or groom, but you were clearly a bridesmaid, and I know my cousin Kevin doesn't have any female friends.
We were friends with Kevin growing up, Pete says, so we can confirm that.
Not just because he's kind of a loser, Kat continues, but that Rachel, Jesus Christ, she keeps him on a tight leash, doesn't she? I'm pretty sure she once warned me off him and I'm his fucking cousin.
Well, if you're his fucking cousin,
Pete jokes. Oh boy.
I'm fairly certain Poppy is quite good friends with the bride,
Simon points out, assuming Kat hasn't realised she's slagging off my friend. Oh yeah, right, so you'll know what I mean, Kat continues. She wiggles a single finger next to her temple. Psycho! I mean, is she wrong? As an adult, Rachel has always been really highly strung and seriously emotional. She worries about everything. She lets people get away with nothing. When Sally asked her to be a bridesmaid, she wanted us all to stop talking to her and boycott her wedding for God's sake. Still, she's my friend, so I'd never say anything.
Looks like this is my seat,
I hear a voice say behind me. Is this him? The man of my dreams? I turn around to see Rachel's little brother Liam standing there. So much for the man of my dreams. Liam is 10 years younger than me. It's so strange that at 21, he doesn't look much older than he did when he was still in his teens. He still looks like a kid, although an older kid than the one Rachel and I used to babysit when we were teenagers, but still not by much. I'd guess he's styling himself on Harry Styles with his longish, messy brown hair, and his green patterned shirt is a little more out there than anyone else is wearing. It definitely suits him, though. Hi, Liam, I say, just about masking the disappointment in my voice. It's not his fault he's a kid instead of a single Chris Hemsworth with low standards.
Hi, Poppy, he says brightly. It's been forever, how are you?
Liam leans forward to give me a kiss on each cheek. I hadn't expected him to be so mature. Then again, the last time I spent more than a few minutes with him, he used to eat grass. Great, thanks, I reply. How are you?
Can't complain,
he says with a smile. What are you doing sitting here? I ask him. Shouldn't you be at the family table?
I think Rach wanted to stick all the singles together out of the way, he replies. He doesn't look offended. He looks amused. This will be the most fun table anyway.
I'll drink to that, Kat says, but I need another drink first. Poppy, let's go. She gestures towards the bar with her head. Okay, sure, I reply. Kat hooks her arm with mine and leans in to talk to me as she leads me towards the bar. Right, do you fancy any of that lot? She asks, cutting to the chase. No, I reply plainly. Neither do I, she replies. But you know what men are like. If we're their only two options, we'll be looking like Cara Delevingne and Kendall Jenner to them. I don't know which one I am. I'd assume the blonde one, but, obviously I'm a million miles from being close to either. We need to stick together, she insists. have each other's back. Make sure neither of us gets so drunk on all things wedding that we think maybe, just maybe, we should lower our standards just this once, just in case it's love. Because chances are it isn't, and we'll only regret it tomorrow when we have to change our phone number or name or entire identity. Sound good?
I laugh. Sounds great, I reply.
OK, let's get a bunch of drinks, because the bar is only free for so long, and we're going to need to be hammered to put up with those three. Well, of all the people at the sad singles table, I have to admit, the last person I was expecting to hit it off with was the only other single woman. Chapter 3. Simon and Pete, or the brothers Dim, as Kat calls them, are doing just as she expected, grafting into overtime to try to win us over. I don't get the impression that either one of them especially fancies either one of us. I think they're just at a wedding and they fancy a woman, any woman. And while I'm sure that the 6 of us at this table are not the only singletons in the room, we're the only ones Rachel has put together with her sort of blessing. I've tried talking to Craig a few times while we were eating, but he's not really interested in conversation. I even asked him how he knew the bride and groom, and from the few words he uttered in reply, I'm genuinely none the wiser. I'm not taking it personally, because he has no interest in talking to Kat either.
You two could be sisters, you know,
Pete tells us. Oh, could we now? Kat replies. You can tell she isn't remotely interested in any of the men at the table, but she seems like she's always down for a bit of a flirt and a good time. I used to be a bit more like that. I definitely used to be way more fun. I think it's a byproduct of my friendship group maturing and leaving me behind. We don't go on wild nights out or for boozy brunches anymore. None of them want to do anything without their counterparts, and I'm being left out of more and more just because I don't have a significant other. Emphasis on the word significant, because I'm seeming insignificant without one.
Oh, yeah,
Pete replies.
It's every man's fantasy. 2 sisters.
Is it? I can't help but blurt.
Oh, yeah,
he says again.
But because you're not actually sisters, it's a more agreeable fantasy.
Seriously, is this guy for real? Is this all that's out there for me as a single girl? The last of the men and their weird fantasies? Kat nods as cheeky smirks spread across the boys' faces. So if I said I wanted you and your brother right now, what would you say? She asks. Craig just stands up and walks off. Thankfully, Liam is already off somewhere. Can you imagine if he reported this back to Rachel?
What?
Simon asks, a look of genuine disgust cemented on his face.
Well, no, that's sick, isn't it?
Pete replies. That's sick, Kat confirms, but 2 sisters isn't.
It's different with girls,
Pete protests. It really isn't, I insist.
We're just going to have to agree to disagree, Pete says. Anyway, you're not actually sisters.
And we're not actually interested. Kat claps back. Simon huffs.
Come on, bro, let's go get some drinks,
he says.
Right behind you,
Pete replies, his fragile masculinity causing him to cringe at his choice of words. Bloody hell, Rachel must hate you as much as she hates me, Kat says, taking down the last of her Pim's cocktail. Oh, that's good. I'm getting another. You want one? I don't think I've had a Pim's in years, I tell her. One summer it was pretty much all I drank. Wimbledon was on, and they had this pop-up Pim's bar in Manchester that served nothing but Pim's cocktails and strawberries with cream. My ex and I somehow made this pop-up bar our local. You got the strawberries for free when you bought a pitcher of Pim's, and we thought we were getting so much for free until we realised we'd spent about £100 on Pim's in 2 weeks. Well, the bar is still free, and you won't just be getting a drink, you'll be getting a walk down memory lane too. What d'you say? Kat waggles her eyebrows at me encouragingly. Go on then, I reply. Amazing, she says. Back in a sec.
I don't think I've ever had Pimm's on New Year's Eve or outside Wimbledon season, and I've certainly not had any since my ex and I sickened ourselves on it. I mentally shake myself. I shouldn't be thinking about Zach today, although I always inevitably do end up thinking about him at weddings for obvious reasons. These days more than ever, because even though we were the first ones to get married, we never turned into whatever my friends are now. We were fun. We had wild nights out and even wilder nights in. Then again, we were only 24 when we got married. If it was anything that broke us, it was having to grow up too much too quickly. We were divorced before I turned 26. "Hi, Poppy," Liam says as he sits back down next to me. "It's good to finally get you on your own for a chat."
Liam has so much confidence. The way he carries himself, the way he talks. It's a kind of self-assurance that I'll bet means he knows exactly how to walk back to the seats after he's taken his turn bowling, which has to be one of the ultimate tests of self-confidence. I didn't have that much confidence at 21. I don't have that much confidence now. We chatted plenty while we were eating. In fact, if I wasn't chatting with Kat or spectating her weird interactions with Simon and Pete, I've been chatting with Liam, catching up, hearing all about the estate agency he works for and his plans for climbing the career ladder. I smile. It's nice to see him grow up so happy in his skin and so full of ambition. And eating food instead of grass, obviously.
"You know, I always had a bit of a crush on you,"
he tells me. "Really?" I squeak.
"Yeah, I don't know when it started. Probably when I was about 12 or 13, he replies.
Beyond the grass-eating years when I used to babysit him then.
"To be honest, I still do."
"What?" I'm getting the wrong end of the stick.
"I still fancy you," he says. "I still really fancy you, and look at us now, both here at the singles table, next to each other, getting on like a house on fire."
OK, so I don't have the wrong end of the stick. I have the right end of the stick. A stick I don't want anything to do with. He isn't drunk, so he must be joking. So I laugh. He doesn't laugh, though. "I'm so much older than you," I remind him, cutting to the chase.
"Only 10 years,
he points out. Only 10 years? 10 years is a big gap when it's between 21 and 31. "Haven't you heard of the French rule?" I joke, referencing the supposed guideline that you should never date anyone who is younger than half your age plus 7.
"No, but I've heard of the French kiss,"
he replies, taking my hand in his, stroking it. The room is alive with people all busying themselves with celebrating, drinking, dancing, chatting. No one is looking at us, but I feel my cheeks flush at the thought of someone just happening to glance over right now and seeing me, seeing this, whatever this is. "What's she doing?" Kat asks him. "Helping her to the bathroom? She's not that old." The sight of Kat with 2 massive glasses of Pimm's couldn't be more welcome.
"We'll continue this later,"
Liam tells me, eventually letting go of my hand. "Was that kid cracking on to you?" Kat asks me when we're finally alone. "I think he was," I reply. I'm amused, but only the tiniest amount. Mostly, I'm just mortified. "You didn't seem like you were interested. Hope I didn't overstep the mark," she replies, nudging my glass towards me. "You saved me," I tell her as I gratefully accept my drink. One sip, and I'm right back to that summer with Zach. I need to push him out of my mind. It's like Kat said earlier about getting drunk on all things wedding. Being surrounded by so much love and talk of happy ever afters really makes you look long and hard at your own situation. The more romantic gestures you witness, paired with the more you drink, and then single men surrounding you start to seem a lot more attractive. Well, still only the ones you didn't used to serve spaghetti hoops to while he watched The Simpsons, but you take my point. I've been to 3 weddings this year, and this is my 3rd time at the singles table, she tells me, widening her eyes for effect. I'm basically, and tragically, an expert at how to survive these things. Are you an expert on how to handle all your friends being married and leaving you out? I ask, only semi-seriously. Oh, my friends gave up on me a long time ago, she replies. We don't hang out like we used to. Same, I say, almost excitedly. They're all doing this stupid couples cooking class in a couple of days, and they haven't invited me just because I'm single. How out of order is that? Honestly, stuff like that boils my blood, Kat replies. I can tell she means it. Was it Rachel who organised it? You can tell exactly how Kat feels about Rachel by the mocking way she says her name. I can't say I'm her biggest fan at the moment either. It was our other friend, Sally, who booked it all, I think, I reply, but they're all going. Kat cocks her head and smiles. Can I borrow your phone? She asks. Yes, I reply. Sure. I unlock my phone and hand it to her. A little trusting, considering we've just met, I suppose. I watch as Kat taps the screen. Her smile just keeps on widening, and there's a mischievous look in her eyes. Eventually, she hands me my phone back. I've told them you'd love to go to couples cooking with them now you've got a date, she informs me. For a moment I just laugh awkwardly. I have a date. I notice Simon and Pete standing a few metres away from us at the side of the room, nursing beers as they so clearly ogle female wedding guests. At least let me pick which one, I say with a sigh. No idea which one I'd choose. Not them, Kat says with a snort. Me. I give her a look. Not like that, you silly cow, she replies. Oh, no, I didn't think... I just meant you'd go to a crappy couples cooking class with me just to prove a point? You'll be amazed what I'd do to prove a point, she says with a smile. Especially this point, just because we're single doesn't mean we don't exist. I smile. I completely agree. Poppy, I hear Sally call out from behind me. That's the problem when you're at the side of the table with a view of nothing but the person on the other side and the wall behind them. You don't hear anyone coming. Oh, hi, I say as normally as I can, but even I think I sound like I've just been caught out doing something I shouldn't. She looks at Kat and then back at me. Can I borrow you, babes? She asks. Over here? Yeah, sure, I reply. I turn to Kat. Back in a minute. Bring a couple more of these back with you, she says, holding up her almost empty glass. Sally frowns at her, like Kat isn't her sort of person. What's up? I ask Sally, as I realise she's leading me over to the others. You said you've got a date for couples cooking, Sally prompts excitedly once we're with Rachel and Lindsay. Yes, I do, I say kind of awkwardly. Who? Rachel asks, almost suspiciously. Well, I laugh. It's a weird sort of laugh, certainly not my laugh. You're the one who sat me at the singles table, so thank you for that. Oh my goodness, Rachel claps her hands and dances on the spot. I just knew you'd hit it off with one of them. Who is it? Is it Craig? Craig is the last one it would be, because he will not talk to me. Perhaps that makes him my best bet. You'll just have to wait and see, I reply. This is a problem for future Poppy, not for now. That's amazing. So pleased you can hang out with us again. So exciting, Rachel replies, but not as exciting as my first dance, which is happening pretty much now. Ladies, go get your men. I feel a little pang of anger deep in my stomach at confirmation of the fact that my friends haven't been including me. And don't you just love how quickly the conversation went back to her? Let's hope we remember all our training from Marcus, Sally says as she leaves. Marcus was, I think, a professional dancer on Strictly Come Dancing or similar. He gave Sally and Seth dance lessons for their first dance. I am not being bitchy when I say this, honest, but you couldn't tell. Some people just aren't natural dancers. I'd know. I'm one of them. Poppy, wait, Rachel says. I need a favour. Oh, God, what could she possibly need from me? She's asked basically nothing of me in preparation for the wedding, instead asking Lindsay and Sally because, their weddings were successful in that they produced marriages that are still going strong. I swear, it's like she thinks I'm cursed. Oh? Strong response, Poppy. Liam was pestering me to let him sit at the singles table, she says with a roll of her eyes. I knew it would only be you and Kevin's oddball cousin Kat, but he was insistent. Okay, I say kind of awkwardly, given what I've learned from Liam today. Kat seems like a bit of a goer, she continues. I'm not exactly sure what she means by that. I don't want her getting her claws into my baby brother. I don't think he's her type, I reply. Everything is her type, Rachel insists. Anyway, it's time for the first dance and, well, I don't want him with no one to dance with and I don't want him dancing with her, so I told him you'd dance with him. Me? I squeak. Yeah, so if you can just do that for me, please, she says as I watch her attention on me slowly draining. She's looking around the room, probably trying to get eyes on Kevin or see if the floor has cleared for her first dance. Do I have to? I ask quietly. Liam, she calls out. Liam, here, Poppy wants to dance with you. She dashes off.
Oh, does she now? Liam says once we're alone, through a huge grin that makes me feel beyond uncomfortable. I knew you'd come around.
Rachel asked me if I'd dance with you, I point out.
Maybe she can see what a good couple we make, he suggests.
I really don't think that's it, I reply. This is it, okay? Just one dance because Rachel asked me to, and in return, I won't tell her about anything you've said today. Deal? Liam just smiles. I think he's picking his battles.
Just one dance, he says unconvincingly. That might be all it takes.
The music starts and Rachel and Kevin take to the dance floor. They're dancing to a cover of God Only Knows by John Legend. It really is beautiful in here, with the twinkling lights above us, the smooth music. There's such a sweet smell in the air, which you could be mistaken in thinking was coming from the giant wedding cake, but I, and only a couple of others, know that it's not real. It's a cardboard construction covered in something that looks like icing. The cake we're all going to be served later is some cheap and cheerful thing hiding in a back room.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to join the bride and groom on the dance floor,
the DJ announces.
May I have this dance?